All right, you guys. So we're a little over 6 months after the initial release of the Nintendo Switch 2. So in this video, I kind of just want to talk about my experience with the Switch 2, how we're going so far, and if I recommend it, etc. Mainly based off the software, it's like the games, because I know price is very subjective towards people, right? Some people might say one game is not worth $80, other people might say it is worth $80, etc. So there's I don't know. Things like that I feel like are a little bit more objective. So I kind of just want to talk about my personal experience and my take on the quality and releases that Nintendo has had since the launch of the Switch 2. Before we get into the video, do me a favor, like, subscribe. Let me know down below how your experience with the Switch 2, or if you haven't got it yet, what's holding you back. All right, cool. So let's start off with like the Nintendo Switch 2 launched, right? And then the big game was Mario Kart World. And Mario Kart World definitely had its retractors. I think at first everyone kind of like was very excited for it. Then very quickly people were like, "This is a Mario Kart 8 Deluxe. This isn't what I wanted." There's too much like heavy rubber banding. It's not as fast as I wanted it to be. The maps are lackluster. Blah 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 blah. Right. So it definitely had its fans, but it's also its criticisms. And as someone who really really loves Mario Kart World, for me personally, that was the best launch game. Like I had so much fun playing Mario Kart World. That's one of my favorite games. Um, on the Switch 2 so far, it's one of my favorite Mario Karts of all time. So off rip, the Nintendo Switch 2 for me personally was like such a banger. It was a off day one. I was having so much fun with the Switch 2. There had a bunch of other titles next to it that, like the Welcome Tour, Dragon Drive, that were just clearly um I don't want to say slop because that's not. I don't know, but it felt very like Nintendo just putting out a product to go alongside the Nintendo Switch 2, more so than like Nintendo put their heart and soul into this. It kind of felt like certain developers were assigned, a task and they completed the task, to what was asked of them, and that was it. They didn't really like have a drive or want this, et cetera, et cetera. So as far as the initial launch of the Nintendo Switch 2, really they had one banger game, right? And then after that, there was, you know, a lull of games that people really wanted to play. Because really, everyone, I think, when they got the Switch 2, the first thing they did was boot up Mario Kart World. And then I think the second thing they did was to go back and play their Nintendo Switch games, but in like updated 4K mode or 60 frames per second or whatever it is, right? And I think that made for a crappy launch. I think for a lot of people, even me included, I definitely think it was a very lackluster launch. Even though I had so much fun playing Mario Kart World, I don't think that was justifiable enough. Shortly after, they did come out with DK Bonanza, and this was the game that I think a lot of people were, super super excited for. They loved Donkey Kong Bonanza. This was like their Mario Odyssey, but for Donkey Kong, and that was great for a lot of people. For me personally, I don't think I like Donkey Kong Bonanza. I think it's a chill game. It's good to like kind of pass the time. But I find myself playing Donkey Kong Bonanza when I have nothing else to play, not necessarily like I'm holding out to play this game, right? If I'm not playing any other game that I want to play, then I put on Donkey Kong Bonanza and I just run through it a little bit. But I don't think I'm anywhere close to beating it, and I know it's not a long game, so that's saying a lot. Especially if another big game comes out, then I'll definitely be picking that up over Donkey Kong Bonanza. That being said, I mean it's a fun game. It's super quality. For a lot of people, that's like exactly what they want from like their Nintendo first party IPs, and like there's nothing you could really say negatively towards Donkey Kong Bonanza. So like again, that's two big quality games that they released pretty close to launch, which is great. We've definitely seen better before, like the PS5 had released with, Miles Morales and Returnal and a bunch of other games. So like I think in comparison to like other launches, even if you look at the Nintendo Switch where they launched with Breath of the Wild, like a genre defining, revolutionary version of Legend of Zelda is, huge, and it's kind of hard to live up to that. That being said, I'm gonna be honest, I never expected Nintendo Switch to like live up to the hype that Nintendo Switch, was. I kind of just expected what I got, a better version of Nintendo Switch with some cool new titles, right? And ultimately, like up until that point, I think I was I was happy with Nintendo Switch 2, but I wasn't like, I don't know, I didn't feel fulfilled, right? And then we fast forward to a couple of the other big launches. The two big notable launches after Donkey Kong Bonanza was Kirby Air Riders and Metroid Prime 4 Beyond. Now, um, I got gifted Kirby Air Riders, and I'll talk about them a little bit. Metroid Prime 4 Beyond for me was a really, really good game. I had so much fun playing it. But if you could check out my review, or pretty much everyone's review, we all kind of walked away with the same thing, and it's the fact that that game should have been so much more. That game had the potential to be one of the greatest games Nintendo had ever released, in my opinion, because the first, I want to say, like 2/3 of that game were so freaking great, so freaking amazing. As a big 2D Metroid fan, that was a lot of what I wanted. But then, obviously the bloat came in, and that's kind of crazy for a game that's only like 10 hours long to have bloat. Is just like but it's very noticeable when you walk away from that. There's definitely decisions game design wise that definitely hold that game back, which sucks. With that being said, I mean it was still another killer great game. Like I'm not gonna say I regret beating it, but it was what it was. And then we get Kirby Air Riders, which a game I honestly like whenever they were releasing like hour long, you know, interviews or developer directs with, Sakurai and stuff like that. It wasn't selling me at all. There was no part of Kirby Air Riders' marketing promotion that really got me excited. Even when I saw like the game released and a bunch of people were streaming it, I wasn't really super excited. I did play the demo right before like the beta process or whatever it was, and that was pretty fun. I was like, oh, this is pretty cool, but it wasn't like anything that really excited me. Um, we ended up getting the game as a Christmas gift, and uh, I don't know. It took me a little bit to like really have the energy to put it in and play it. To be honest, but eventually we did. And honestly, Kirby Air Raiders is really good. Like it's wacky, it's insane. It's like I honestly don't always fully know what's going on, but I'm definitely know I'm having fun, and I think that matters more than anything else, especially with a game this crazy. I think it's like Smash Bros on steroids because everything's going super fast and you're winding and you're going through tunnels and you're like flipping and you're doing all types of crazy stuff. And I think Kirby Air Riders is a game that definitely needs more love and recognition. Which brings me to the overall Nintendo Switch 2 6 months after the fact, right? And if we're to look forward to like what they have coming out with like Mario Tennis and stuff like that, honestly, I feel like the Nintendo Switch 2 has had a really great 6 months, despite I think maybe not living up to what a lot of people wanted it to be. I think the Nintendo Switch 2 has delivered a lot and is showing obviously that like with slightly stronger technology, etc. Like Nintendo is always gonna cook. They're always gonna make banger games, and that's gonna come. And I think Nintendo Switch 2 has the potential to probably be better than Nintendo Switch in overall, just because like they have so much more potential to release amazing games. And like even if we're to look at a game like let's say Mario Tennis that's coming out, that's a lot more jam packed with content than Mario Tennis Aces was. If they did do that, let's say to all their games, like let's say the next Mario game or the next 3D Mario game is as jam packed, is more jam packed than a Nintendo Switch Mario Odyssey game is, then it's like, dude, like this is gonna be a great console. And so far, these 6 months has proven to me at least that this is probably one of the best consoles I think I've played. It's pretty much your Nintendo Switch, which the Nintendo Switch is one of my favorite consoles of all time. But it's pretty much that, but better. Like, so it's one of those things like if you didn't like the Nintendo Switch, or if you noticed that you didn't really play the Nintendo Switch that often when you had it, I don't recommend getting the Switch 2 because I don't think the Switch 2 is doing anything different by no means. With that being said, if you love the Nintendo Switch and you haven't upgraded, this is definitely, I think, worth it. Um, not only does it have the backwards compatibility, so you can play all your old games, which I always still do that anyways, right? Like I was replaying Mario Wonder because I was debating whether I wanted to get the upgrade. And again, like man, the Nintendo Switch catalog of games is one of the best catalogs of games ever, and I stand on that. Um, I'm not a huge Nintendo like fanboy per se, but I definitely love like a lot of their IPs, a lot of their games. It's very nostalgic for me. I grew up playing Nintendo games, so And Nintendo Switch 2 just kind of feels more like an extension of the Nintendo Switch, and I don't think that's a bad thing. I think a lot of people were trying to frame that as like, oh, this is like Nintendo Switch 2.0 or whatever. Like it's like just upgraded next gen version of it, but not necessarily like the next revolution of Nintendo, right? I think Nintendo has always done that where it's like from GameCube to Wii was radically different. From Wii U to Switch was radically different. Like it was always like felt like revolutionary, and the Nintendo Switch 2 didn't necessarily feel revolutionary by no means. Like it's almost kind of laughable how they're barely integrating things like game chat, etc. Like that's kind of almost laughable that this is something that Nintendo's barely adding onto their consoles. With all that being said, like what they do great, and that's their software. And up until this point, I think they've been killing it. So if I was to look back at the last 6 months of the Nintendo Switch 2, I had a blast, and I look forward to the remainder of this. And I don't honestly don't have too much complaints. Yeah, there's a price point argument with certain quality of their games. I think there's always going to be that conversation with pretty much everything. Um, but in general, like I don't have a whole lot of negatives to say about the console, and I like that, and I look forward to whatever else we get with this new console, Nintendo Switch. Anyways, you guys, I'm gonna leave the video with that because I don't have a whole lot much more to say. Let me know down below what you guys think, and I'll see you guys in the next one.